Good afternoon. Welcome to the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. I'd just like to take a few moments to welcome you all. My name is Dominic Hardy. I work in the Education and Public Programs Department, where I'm Public Programs Officer. It's a pleasure to welcome you here. We are embarking on our 5th season of lectures with François-Marc Gagnon at the Gail and Stephen A. Jaroslawski Institute for Studies in Canadian Art. And it's been a very delightful journey so far, over 4 years, and to return for a 5th. Each year, Dr. Gagnon has looked at the history of Canadian art through a different lens each time, and this year wanted to look most especially at spirituality in Canadian art, and we're delighted to once again have an original series of lectures from him and his presence here. We're delighted to have all of you. I see many friends of the museum here, friends who are friends with a capital F, and friends who are simply friends of the museum, widely speaking. Thank you for being with us, and also thank you to all of you who are at Concordia University who are here today. It's really a pleasure to welcome you in the audience for today and for the next 5 weeks. The series is indeed a collaboration that's made possible by the Institute, and I want on behalf of the museum to once again extend our thanks to Dr. Lauren Lerner, Chair of the Art History Department, to Rosemary Joly, who's the Administrative Assistant, for all of their help in making this happen, and indeed to the Department and the Faculty of Fine Arts at Concordia University, with whom we have a lot of great collaborations these days, and this is one of the ones of which we're just the most fond among many. Our programs are also supported very generously by René Malo and Marie Gagnon. Just a brief presentation of François-Marc Gagnon. Now, he's the first chair of the Gail and Stephen A. Jaroslawski Institute for Studies in Canadian Art. This after a long and distinguished career, which is about halfway through, if that, as a prolific researcher and teacher who's been beloved of student and general audiences for many years, and television audiences too, for an inspired and dynamic and accessible, without sacrificing any of the learnedness, approach to teaching. He's the recipient of a Governor General's Award for his critical biography of Paul-Émile Bordua, that's in 1978, and has been widely recognized for his outstanding contributions to the literature of Canadian art history, whether it's from the imagery of the time of Jacques Cartier right through to contemporary art. We find studies on diverse artists, Marcel Barbeau, Jacques Urtubise, Jean-Paul Riopel, Bordua, of course. In 1998, there's the defining study, which is the Chronique du Mouvement Automatiste, but also on Cornelius Krieghoff. He ranges far and wide in his approaches and interests in Canadian art history. We are the very lucky audiences for these researchers. So may I ask you to welcome most warmly François-Marc Gagnon.
Okay, so like you were just told, my idea this year is to try to see which kind of relationship we could define between Canadian art and spirituality, or even to be more clear about it, even religion. And I thought for the first lecture to spontaneously, I must make one lecture about the First Nation, because we could think at first sight that both art and religion could be very rich there. It could be very interesting. And indeed, I think it's spontaneously that we will go in that direction. But we have to first to ask a question. Are we entitled really to, and maybe it will look not politically correct, but after all, we expect more from French Canadian from this side than from others, than not to be politically correct. And I will ask the first question. I said, is it right to speak of art about what the object that are created, let's say totem poles and thank you. I may need this later. The ritual object and all that, are we entitled to speak of art and also of religion? And indeed, these are old questions. When the first European came here, and I'm thinking, for instance, of the Jesuit missionaries, they saw some manifestation that we will describe like artistic or religious, and right away it was so foreign for them and so different from what they used to do. They used to speak of their objet or whatever they made as grotesque. This is the word they used, and the other word that they used also was marmousset. This is a word that we don't use anymore in French of today. You have this, I think, it's the name of one kind of monkey, marmoset. So already it's not very polite to describe the art of the others like monkey art, I would say. It's more or less what they meant. And when they speak of their religion, habitually they deny that it exists. They have no religion, no priest, no temple, nothing. They live like brutes, they would say. Or if they begin to recognize some aspect of their behaviors, less religious, they would speak of superstition or even of cult of the devils. So these are a whole question about, and of course we cannot answer them in those terms today. It would be completely racist, and the only excuse you can give these old Jesuits is of course the distance of time. Maybe at the time they could not do better, but today of course we have recognized their artistic merit and the richness of their mythology and all that, and we will not dare to speak in those terms. Nevertheless, however, these questions are serious for another reason. I will try to explain why. Of course, the first attitude, and I think with the best will, was, let's say, the people, anthropologists of the 20s and all that, they were thinking that if we recognize the merit and the great heart done by these people will help also the general public, let's say, to realize that these cultures are genuine, are authentic, are different, and should be respected as such. I think this was the intention. But then when you think from the point of view of native people, when you describe their works only in terms of aesthetic, and that one of the consequences of that is these works should be in museum and not in their village and not in their territory, then you are missing, at least in their eyes, one of their more important signification. Because, let's say, a totem pole, before being a sculpture and before ending in a museum, is a marker of territory. And when you think of the time, you have all these battles, you see legal battles and political battles about the land claims that the so-called white people wanted to invade their territory and all that. To speak only of the aesthetic aspect of the works of art was in a way to hide their real meaning for these people. Understand me well, I don't pretend that there's no aesthetic merit to these works, but it's not their first purpose. It's not their first signification. And not only that, we could go even a little bit further and say that by doing this, we were occulting their real meaning. It's like two sides of the same attitude. You stress their aesthetic quality, but at the same time, you submit their political significance, as if the two things goes together. So it's a kind of fishy type of situation in which, even with good intention, you will have, for instance, anthropologists who were claiming that these works are fantastic, should be in our Museum of Anthropology, of Ethnology and all that, and sitting on commission where we should restrain the right to speak their language, we should restrain their land claims, they should not be allowed to live there because now we want to create big city there and Vancouver needs more space and let's push the Kwakiutl further and all that. The same anthropologists were advising the two things. They were telling the government, well, you should proceed like this with them, we know how to speak their language, we will tell them. And on the other hand, what great art they do and all that. You realize this kind of ambivalence, I think that so-called post-colonial type of art history that we are doing today have denounced. So that means that we have to be careful when we speak of artistic merit of that. Well, we have to think also in a kind of much broader type of setting, with a broader type of view. Will it be the same with religion? For instance, ask yourself the question, is it the same thing to put, let's say, a Madonna or a crucifixion in a museum than to put, let's say, a rattle of a shaman in the museum also. And in a way, it's Hans Belting, of course, who have, this German art historian who have the first asked this question and making us realize that, let's see, in the medieval time and in the Renaissance, a Madonna is first, and it is an object of devotion before being a work of art. Again, it's not contradictory, but let's say the first uses of these paintings were not to end up in the museum. They were or in church, or in private chapel, or in, even in home. And it is our tendency to decontextualize things that make them art, in a way. We get them out of their real context, and we create works of art with this, meaning having only, I would say, only aesthetic signification. It's not that it's not there, but habitually it's a kind of reducing approach to this work. And in terms of religion, I think it's interesting to see that there is discussion about the very meaning of the word. Let's say of the etymology of it. It's discussed to this day. You have habitually, which says religion come from or religare or religere, of a two Latin word. Let's see, you have then also a lot of discussion around that, but I will try to be clear and to show you a little bit what we mean. With religare, the first one on the top there, will means to gather, to assemble, and religare will means to connect. So understood in that sense, you could say religion is both. It's something that assembles the people around a certain amount of belief, a certain amount of behavior, of moral code, way to deal with the sacred, whatever. And so you have a certain amount of things that put these people together. They are Catholics, they are Protestant, they are this, they are that. They have their own creeds and their own behavior, and so they are gathered together. And on the other hand, religere, to connect, will mean they connect with the heaven, let's say, or whatever you call it, the kind of other world, if you want. So that's a first type of description, and the two things are not contradictory, since you could say, well, a religious group is some amount of people who agree on a certain way to connect with the gods, or with God, if you want. But these etymologies have been discussed, and for instance, religare have been described as more or less a Christian invention. It is the Christian who have insisted on the fact that religion is a way to gather people together, to make a kind of social statement, if you want. And that etymology is more recent, and the older one is religere, and religere means also meaning repetition, and lego is to read. And what it means, finally, it is some attitude where you read again and again, very carefully, all the ritual, all the text that you are supposed to know, in order not to make mistake, to be really connected with the sacred. If you are, let's say, the worst sin then for religere will be to be indifferent or to be not scrupulously attentive to the things. And in a way, you could say that religion, in that sense, it's what separates gods and men. And it was make sure that we don't mix both. Not only it doesn't connect each one, but in a way, it keeps also the distance. You follow carefully the ritual in order not to be wrong and to have God against you, or to be crushed and things like that. You see a little bit this type of new interpretation of religare, and I think in a way they are probably closer to what was the whole feeling about religion. This idea that it's a ritual, it's a thing that you have to follow carefully if you want to be, if you want to please the gods. But it's also, in a way, it's to keep the two worlds separated and not mixed and not confounded one to the other. And in that sense, the religion is almost a non-Christian invention. It is the French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who died recently, that stressed that fact. He says, if you think that when you use the word religion out of Christianity, that you are describing the same thing that the Christians describe, he says you are probably wrong. Why? Because with time, in Occident, let's say religion become a kind of, I will almost say a speciality, a kind of something detached from the rest, and something separated, with an entity as such. In the whole way, it's not that at all. It is political. It is mixed with the nation. It mixed with everything. You cannot make a section of will be religion and the rest will be profane, for instance. And this, with Christianity and with modern Christianity, I could say, religion was finally become kind of an autonomous type of behavior, different from politics, different from, and good like this because it's more tolerant and it doesn't interfere in the organization of the society, and people are more happy with that. But you realize that maybe when we will speak of religious art with the First Nation, we should not see it as a kind of a separated sphere like this, completely different from the politics. It is, on the contrary, exactly in the same. It mixed together, and it's not at all separated. The notion of sacred is different. Religion, I would say, it's more it's the order of the behavior and the order of the belief. The sacred is a more subjective type of feeling. It is the feeling that you have immense power outside there, and that you don't know how much to deal with it and how to behave with it. It can be dangerous. And this feeling of the sacred actually create specialists of the sacred, priests, shaman, let's say people who can screen it in a way and could channel it in the right place. The sacred also will create sacred places. You will have a temple, a church, a special mountain where you can meet God and not elsewhere. There will be kind of distinction like that. But this is much more subjective, and if you have been through the experience of changing religion, you know that the sacred of one religion is not the one of the other. And it's not the same type of feeling. So this is more subjective, but the two goes together, of course. Religion will be the more collective, more social dimension of the phenomenon, and the sacred, the feeling of the sacred will be more personal, more subjective. Okay, with this introduction, trying to clarify a little bit the terms, I think we can now deal with material that I wanted to show you. I took my examples in basically only in the West Coast Indian of Canada. And I thought of dealing with two types of representation of animals. Why animals? Because animals are in a way a good image of this sacred, of this dangerous world that we have to deal with. Some of them are dangerous. Some you will see, you start with a frog, is not the best idea. You will see why. Of all animals I could choose, it's not the best, but you will see there's a connection. And also, they have this kind of, would say, unexpected presence in the life of hunters and things like that. Suddenly they appear and you have to deal with them fast and all that. And it's not astonishing that a lot of mythology and lore was created around this aspect of the creation, let's say, of all this animal life. And so I said, okay, I will start with one animal in particular, with the frogs. And this is a jewel created by the man you see on the right, Bill Reed. Bill Reed was born from a Haida mother and from an English father. So some people said he was not really an Indian, and the others says, no, he's okay, he's kosher. And according to the Jewish religion, he is Indian. Okay, and Bill Reed, in fact, died recently, but he was an extraordinary sculptor in terms that he wanted to recreate a little bit the tradition of the ancient, and to recreate it basically by taking inspiration from the past, but also by creating new objects. Like, for instance, certainly this brooch, or how do you say, brooch brooch of gold is not a thing traditional in the old Indian way. So I don't think they will wear such a thing. But he took one theme that is linked to their mythology, and this is what is important, of course, to see this kind of context in which these representations should be handled. If we see only the aesthetic aspect, we'll say, okay, this is beautiful because it's in gold, and the eyes, you cannot see it much on my photo there, but they are done with abalone, a type of shell, so they have this kind of nice color, changing color that with phenomenon of iridization like this that you could have from light. So you could see it as a beautiful object, but in fact it is linked also to a mythology of people of the Niske that you see here on this map. The things you have to know, well, for instance, I mentioned that Bill Reid was from a Haida mother. So this is the Queen Charlotte Islands on the coast of BC, of British Columbia. And in front, you have the Tsimshian people who are divided in few tribes. You have the Gitskan and the Niske are the more important one, let's see. So there is a myth, and it's important to have the map because you will see the myth suppose that you have this map in head because there's things happening in the island and then on the terra firma, if you want, on the ground there. So you have to see it a little bit like this too. So the story goes like that, and the story about the frog. I will just read you a part of it. And you will see then that why this little animal, who's so innocent in a way, could be seen in a way quite powerful and quite dangerous in a way. So the story goes like this. 3 boys were playing in the forest and built a fire to keep warm. A small frog tried to get past them to reach the river, but twice was tossed back by the boys. The 3rd time, the boys threw the frog into the fire, where it turned to death. Volcano Woman realized that the frog, who was one of their children, is missing. She tells the villagers that the boy must be punished for killing the frog, but they ignore her. Volcano Woman then caused the nearby mountain to erupt and covering the village with lava and killing almost everyone. So you see that suddenly in that myth, of course, then suddenly the frog becomes quite dangerous if you don't behave nicely. Or you could see in this a kind of ecological type of moral, I would say. So you have to be careful to treat every animal, even a small frog, with respect, because then you could create a catastrophe. It could bring really the hell on you. And like any myth of these Indians, you find them sometimes with variation, with different, they are rephrased. But one of the things after that the lava have covered the village, apparently in one of the versions they told you that there was one woman who believed the Volcano Woman and was clever enough to take her son and to walk in the island, to cross the strait between the island and end up in the Tsimshian, and then get married with a Tsimshian man and come back finally at the end of her life with the Haida. And this, of course, it's all the problem of exogamy, that you have to go out of the place where you are born and from your people and find a wife or a husband in the other tribe, and then you could bring him back if you want. So certain version of the myth will add this aspect and all that. When you see that, then the mere aesthetic signification of the little jewel of Bill Reid suddenly get expanded, and suddenly you say, this is much more intricate than we thought first, and it's important to see it in these contexts, otherwise you miss I would say most of the signification of it. If you reduce it just to a kind of aesthetic dimension, you can. And then also what happened, it is that you can connect it now with many different types of work of art where you will see the frog in different contexts and always with these implications. Like here you have a tlingit dish. Well, the tlingit, sorry, live quite to the north. They are really at the, I would say, at the border of Alaska and British Columbia. And they are really living somewhere here on the top of this map. And let's say the dish represents a frog. You see her hind leg there. And also, of course, it's a dish, something useful. And okay, habitually, when you have a dish as elaborated as this one, it means that it belongs to a certain clan or certain family, or it have some, let's say, political signification in that sense, because the frog will be then a crest, something that you will identify with, and it will distinguish you from the people with wolf and the people with beaver and the people with other animals. Like the whole notion, if you go to Freud, the whole notion of totem, of your ancestor. And so the fact that it's a dish transformed like that means also that probably it was used in the context of special feast. You will not eat in this every day. You will have much more plain type of dishes for the everyday cooking and all that. But if you receive people and if you have a feast context, then you use this thing where your crest is, where the people say, oh, this is the people of the frogs, this is the people who are related to this volcano woman and all that, and then because of that, they should be handled with care. You see, you don't throw frogs in the fire. We never know what can happen. So this certainly will identify these people. And let's say, for instance, we know that they use these huge dishes. This is very, I think I took a note of the dimension of these things here. It's like, let's 1.5 meters long dish. So they will bring that outside of the house with food in it. And this one, it's not associated with a frog, this kind of animal. Here it's a wolf, and you have a double one there. And actually they will tell you also the story of the family, why we have this crest, why we have this link with the wolf and all that. Then we'll use the little dish that we saw before to distribute to everybody. So again, these work are also have to be seen in the context of more general context of a feast, and let's say they have beautiful also ladle to serve from the big dish to the little one, whatever food there is there. Sometimes even the food is not eaten on the spot. It's bring with, say you are received by a chief, you get the food and you go. It's a takeout. But these ladle are beautifully carved. Like this one, have a head here on the top with a huge mouth open, and then here the junction, let's say, of the handle with the ladle itself, it's a bird head. These are more plain, if you want, but they are done with horn. It's not plastic, of course, and this one is in wood, the bigger one on the left. And so you have all this gradation of very common type of dishes or ustensil, if you want, and then suddenly more elaborated one, and all this goes together and make suddenly some meaning to this frog theme. Let's say that you will have like a crest on, like a shield, if you want, indicated on one of the little dish there. The other context where you can find also the frog, it is in the more religious type of ceremony. Especially many villages on the coast have a kind of double system, you see, in which you have village for winter and you have village for summer. You don't live at the same place at the same time. And winter is a wonderful season for feasts, for religious display and all that. This is, say you have less, you are more free, and this is the time to do. And one of the dance that is done by the woman is also full of, I would say, almost like magic trick. And this frog is a kind of, you have to imagine it's a kind of puppet. And the woman who makes the dance will go with it, and you will not see the wire and all that, and this thing will crawl on the floor, you know, and surprise you, of course, because, and not only that, here, this part here under her belly is in kind of cloth, and they could inflate it, whoop, whoop, like a frog will do for real. And so they have this kind of trickery, and also it's the idea also that the woman is pregnant with these frogs, and we hear them croaking inside of her, and then they appear, and then she can re-swallow them like this. So it adds an element of trickery, of fun also to this kind of more solemn ceremony. You will have, it's almost like in a ceremony, you will have suddenly a trickster who come and will create a diversion or something. I wish we had that a little bit in my religion. I was raised as a Catholic. Habitually, our ceremony were very boring. we would have need a little frog like this, you see, to suddenly to look. Another context in which you find them also, here it's Haida, and again, I give you the map just to situate it here. The Haida is with the Queen Charlotte Island. They are wonderful sculpture. They are probably, with the Kwakiutl, are the most interesting one. Okay, this is a recent work. This is done in argillite, and you know this kind of material that's relatively easy to sculpt, but you have to know, you cannot improvise yourself in argillite sculpture. And it represents, again, a frog, and on the top here you have two little personages who communicate with their tongue. And we don't know exactly what is the meaning of this, but you will find it in many other contexts. And probably it's kind of transmitting of power. And the frogs is also, it's an animal, it's interesting because it's linked with water, it links with earth, and you saw with fire too. And not only it's linked with water, it is an animal, according to the mythology, that could see through water and could discover precious metal also. So it's an animal of many, I would say, of many layers. And it's not astonishing at all that they will make, for instance, a vase like this, who's supposed to just to collect some water and to make purification and things, that they will collect it in such an elaborated type of form. You find it again, this kind of communication of tongue here in a rattle here. So probably the head here on the top is a raven, then you have a kingfisher, and then you have this man lying on his back and having this little frog on the top communicating her power to him. And this, of course, it's a rattle, a chief rattle that make sounds that very often is described as the sounds of water bird quitting the water. So it's a beautiful image, of course, of this sound. But instead of just seeing it as kind of maracas, I don't know what, these animals quitting the water. This is kind of modern type of rattle, but quite traditional. Look at here, you have a much more ancient one with almost the same elements, but combined differently. Let's say again, you have the raven head here. Here, instead of the man, like we had before, we had a man with a bare head, which is here. Habitually in the sculpture, when the ears are on the top like this, it's an animal. When they are on the side, it's human. This is one key of their system. And it makes sense. So you will have ears on a bird, on whatever, meaning this is an animal. And when they are on the side like this, this is human. And the fact that the ears are on the top here, okay, and then he communicates his power to this kingfisher. And then when you look at on the bottom, let's say, of the rattle, then again you find other design. Like here you will probably have a falcon or a kind of eagle or something. And even we find here, completely in the bottom, we find our frog again here. I don't know if you see it, or I'm just the only one to see it. There's a kind of frog design in the back like this. Always like if they play with the same type of the association of frog and raven is very common. You find it often, and it's specific of certain clan, of certain group of people that identified with these two animals. Sometimes it's much less clear and evident than what I just showed you. maybe another example where it's a headdress. I just showed a kind of National Geographic type of picture on the right, where you see these headdress, how they look, in fact. And here you have a little toad who is incorporated to this. Habitually, you have also fur of ermine, as you can say that, ermine or sloth, or to cover his head. On the top here is whisker of seal. They're rather rough whisker of seal. It's not like a cat, you know. You cannot. They are. And what the chief does, he put down of bird inside of this little cage, I would say, that you have on the top. And when he dances, this down goes around him like this. And it's like if he was giving light around him. It's a very, very clever type of way to create this effect. And then, okay, you have habitually a kind of mask like this one, who could, again, each one with his specific shield or crest. And here, in this example that I found in Franz Boas, you may have a toad, and you see even the leg of this bird here appear on the side there, and the articulation between the legs and the head will be another little personage, like you see here. You see, with his 2 paws and 2 feet. So, in a way, to represent the articulation, instead of just putting a rotula or something, well, they will put a little personage who will make the link like this. But sometimes, like I told you, the design or the relation with the subject matter, with the frog, is not at all evident or not so clear. Like, for instance, in these tattoos that you have here, who are Kwakiutl. The Kwakiutl are the people on the solid ground, let's see, here near Vancouver Island. They go up north a little bit here, but most of them are here in front of Vancouver Island, but on the firm ground. Okay, to read this design and to understand it as a frog, you have to see on his, I have the Hebrew word, it's too sick, but it's probably not the right word. Anyway, on his bums, let's say, you see the mouth of the frog and her 2 eyes, and this is her back, of course, and this is her hind legs, and these are their front legs, okay? As if they use the shape itself of the body to create this design. And on the front, you have the same thing. You have the mouth of the frog here with teeth, which this is not very accurate. It's probably a mythic frog who could have teeth like this, but in fact they don't. And this will be her belly. And then you will have, again, the 2 set of legs associated with the arms. And when Boas published that design, he says probably he wanted to finish it on the other side too, but he didn't do it. Because it's, of course, what they did, they make the design of the 2 personages, and they ask some native to draw on them, see what is the signification, and ask questions and dialogue with the... but then you see it's much more transposed and less clear than in sculpture, and then what we saw, or the puppet, or things like that. So this is a wonderful example of the, I would say, the multiplicity of the polymorphism of, I would say, the possibility of using a kind of conceptual form and transforming it in many, many, many guise, if you want. Like in this one, I think it's probably the ultimate of that type of transposition. It's a decoration of a box like this one. These boxes are fantastic. They are done with without nails and without anything of that kind. They know how to bend the wood in 3, well, let's say the 4 corners like this, and they attach only 1 corner with some roots or something like that. So it's really, it's not a box done with nails and with it's really bent wood box. And these boxes are used for many things, to put the regalia and all the important masks, and eventually also for the bones of the chief when he died. So you could collect them and you keep it at home. So that's, because of that, the design on them will be very important also, will be very significant. Here in this one, you have a design of a frog. Okay, like I told you, you get again this idea of the two ears on the top. So meaning this is an animal. A frog habitually have no teeth. This is the best indication. Most of animals will be represented with teeth. When you have an animal without teeth, it means it's a frog. Then under it here, you have a kind of symbolization on each side of her body. But this is her front leg. Here you see the little claws maybe at the end. And this is the in leg here. You see, attached on the top there, but going like this on each side. But there, again, without the specification of the sculptor or anybody familiar with the culture, I don't see how you could find out like this just by looking at it. It's so transposed and so stylized, I would say, that then you have a kind of almost pure form of this. But all this is connected. All this goes together, and you go from one object to the other, and you are always referring to this myth that I was telling you at the beginning, from close or from far. And the same thing, the same type of reasoning could be done with the bear. This was my second theme. I says I should take two very different animals. Bear, of course, are right away seen as dangerous and as very powerful animal, and to associate them with the sacred seems more natural than with the frog. Okay, when you know the context, okay, you could say you understand that. Then, for instance, here you have an example of a bracelet design, and here I showed you a real bracelet design with the design of the bear, done again by Bill Reed. Bill Reed, by his father, had learned modern silversmith, and that's why he could do this transposition of Haida theme in jewelry. So it's a bracelet, but here you see, the first thing to understand is the way the design is done. It seems to be like a face when you look at them with two eyes, but you have to understand that it's in fact two profiles facing each other and link only where the nose is. That's why in between you have this empty space here, which have been filled after by a design that I will show you what it signifies. But in a way, you could see it as a kind of two profiles facing each other, linked only at the level of the mouth. And that's why it gives them a huge mouth like this. And in fact, they are seen as two half of bear joined together. This is formally, I think it's important to see it. For instance, this design here on the top, it's a symbolization of this type of hat. Chief will wear these hats with many cylinder like this if they are more important, and less cylinder if they are less important. So here you have three of them. So he means that in his bracelet, he announced that he's an important chief. He have three levels of whatever, of richness, of power. And here you will see how, in different contexts, now it's painting on walls, let's say, where you find this kind of two-side drawing, a kind of double drawing like this. I think it's easier to understand here that you have half of a bear here, if you complete here is, and on the other side, and especially this is the back on each side, and this is the four legs. Coming inside like this, as if you have two bears side by side like this. One is like this and the other is like that. And in the total image give you the impression of one bear. And here in this Tsimshian example, I think you see even the lower jaw finish here, and finish here on this side. And then you have even hair on his back here. And you have these two big claws on each side. And the round shape here is a door. It's where it's a big design in front of a house, and you enter through this circle. You can go inside of the belly of the. But okay, so these are the formal aspects of this type of design. But their signification again is linked to mythology. And in this case, you have one of the most popular myths in the West that is very lively up to this day, and you will understand why. It is more or less, the story starts a little bit with grivoiserie, we say in French, but it's the story of a beautiful princess, young lady, human, and goes to pick up berries and suddenly step in bear dung. And she have the most human reaction. She shout at the bear. She said, "Ah, stupid bear, can you..." I'll not say what she said. But, and then suddenly a nice, beautiful young man appear near her, and they become to talk together, and he bring her to his village, and he reveal himself to be the bear. Okay, you have kind of two identity. And then, of course, she's a little bit in trouble because she insulted him before. And so they have, but it finished well, they got married. And then they got children, but the children are half bear and half human, since the father is in fact a bear, even if he looks like human, and the woman is human. And so the children she have are half bear, half human. Then the problem it is that the woman who is in the village of the bear is lost for her own people. They are looking for her, where she went. And she has 3 brothers who are very eager to find her because it's her sister and all that. And they are looking everywhere. And finally, they find these 2 kids who are half bear and half human in the wood. And they I don't know how, but they recognize that they must come from her sisters. And they follow them up to the village and finally find the sister. But in the meantime, also, because the little cubs were lost in the wood, the bear father was looking for them too. And at a certain point, one of the brother of the girl meet this bear, and they fight together, and the brother's a good hunter, kill the bear. And he take his pelt and he bring it with him. And later in the myth, he says he'd give it to the wife. This is the worst gift you can give to a wife: the skin of your husband. It's not a very good idea. But in fact, again, you are dealing with different version of this myth. In certain version, they says that the bear knew that he will die. And he tell his wife in advance what to do with his pelt. So as if he could predict his death and all that. He's a god, so he's powerful. Okay, so you see the type of situation. And why this myth was so important, well, first, how this totem pole is related to the myth that I'm just telling you. On the top, you have the 3 brothers there who are looking for their sister. And then you have 2 bears. You have one here. I don't see if you see his eyes, his nose, and you have a little froggy on his near him. And then you have another one here who's much more important, his eyes, his nose. He holds his wife here between his 2 hands, and you have his 2 little cubs on the bottom there. So this is really the bear of the myth. This is the important one. And so the totem pole will reflect some aspect of the myth like this. It's done in argillite. It's not very big. It's like almost for a tourist consumption, but it's linked to their mythology. And more than that, if you think of it, the relationship between the Haida people, and another culture was the bear people, it's in fact a kind of reflection of the relationship between the native and the whites. And these women who are attracted by the European or by the Canadian, let's say, of European origin, and go south to Victoria, become prostitute or get married with them, are in a way lost. And their kids are half Indians and half white. They are not half bear and half human, but they are this kind of double identity. And then for a culture in which matrilinear connection is very crucial and important, it's not astonishing that the 3 uncles want to find their sister and want to bring her back in her own culture. You understand that there is, in this myth, who seems to be just imaginative. You have a reflection of a real situation, of historical situation since the end of the 19th century to this day. This is one of the big issues of matrilinear culture. What happened when our women are attracted by the other culture, by the white culture, goes to work in Victoria or in Vancouver and never came back and have children there. This is a kind of drama, and it's a real drama, but you can understand that the myth will reflect that, and as you explain, in a way also, the popularity of this theme that you see so often represented in this culture, in the sculpture of these people. The other representation of bear that you could have in another context, less linked to this mythology, but to something else, are masks, of course. Like one here you have who seems to be quite realistic, done with the skin of a grizzly bear and with his fur. And there was a chief, I want to give you a quotation of that, where he explained, Chief Robert Joseph, who says, when I was a boy of about 5 or 6 years of age, I became aware of the omnipotent presence of masks. Like in a big house, you have masks everywhere. And they had a life of their own, he says, sometimes menacing, forbidding, always intrusive. Masks seem everywhere. They were at home in attics and storage spaces or dancing around the fire in the big house. Other times, they will be evident round and about the village, like the grizzly bear, like this one, for instance, and the tsunukwa, and then I will explain what it is after, the wild woman of the woods, he says, and these two really kept us kids in line. For most of us as children in a village, it is these masks we remember the most, along with the bakwas, the wild man of the woods, and the chief of the ghost. We were told to behave or fall victim to the appetite of these three. Needless to say, generation of Kwakiutl children behave themselves as a result of these creatures. So you have three of them. You have the bear, who is dangerous. If you don't behave, the bear will eat you. Okay. So this we can understand. We use this kind of tricky way with our own kids. And the other, the Tsonokwa, I will show you what it is, and the Bakwas, the three entities, let's say, who are dangerous, who are, like I was describing at the beginning, the sacred. Something that you don't know. It's powerful, you don't know how to deal with, and it could be used for good or for evil. And it could connect, it could be a way to educate your children, but it could also bring them a lot of trouble. And the Tsonokwa, you find here, this is, okay, you have the grizzly bear in front of this dish here, and in the back, you have this personage with big round mouth like this, and very high, let's say, deep sock tie. This is right away the two characteristics of this kind of hogress, I would say. I would describe her as a kind of woman of the wood with eyes who shine in the dark, like if she had burning coal instead of eyes. And she has this mouth like this always to make hoo, 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 this kind of scary sounds in the middle of the night you see in the wood. And she had the reputation to look for children and to put them in her bag and to eat them at leisure at home, you know. So when they says the Tsonokwa was keeping us in line, you understand why. They were scared of this thing that will appear. Here, at this point of my expose, I'm tempted to show you a picture by Emily Carr, who have represented the Tsonokwa. It's one of her famous pictures on this theme. And as you know, she's a wonderful writer, Emily Carr. She have tell the story of her encounter. So what you have here is the painting is at the AGO that you have on the left, and this is a drawing she did much before. Probably, see, the painting is of the 30s, but the drawings habitually are done in 1912 or something like that. And this is probably a photo of the actual Tsonokwa that she saw. It's come from Curtis, you know, this famous photographer, American photographer, who have made an album on native people, and it's probably exactly the one that Emily Carr saw. The way she described the things, she says, I was in one of these winter villages. And this is interesting because she go in the summer, and the village is empty. There's no people in winter there for the time. And in Guiasdom, it's one of the little village there. And she says, water was in the air, half mist, half rain. Well, this is described exactly well the Vancouver weather areas. It's always half mist, half rain, as you know. The stinging nettles, higher than my head, left their nervous smart on my ears and forehead as I beat my way through them, trying at all the while keeping my feet on the plank walk which they hid. Big yellow slugs crawl on the walk and slime it. My feet slipped, and I shot headlong to the very base, for to her very base. Then suddenly she described the Tsonokwa that appeared to her. Right? You see she's walking on a kind of sidewalk in wood, and she slipped, and then suddenly she see this thing towering above her. It's very well described. For she had no feet. The nettles that were above my head reached only to her knees. It was not the fall alone that jerked the hoe out of me, for the great wooden image towering above me was indeed terrifying. And it goes on, I will not quote everything, but she described it quite well. And as the feeling she got from this kind of apparition and the series of drawing and painting she made of it. You have, for instance, you have others represented, just to give you an idea. Here you have another one included in a kind of totem pole. You see the big mouth, like I told you, always like this around, and deep eyes, and this kind of arms like this goes, and she have pendulous breasts also, and often she will be depicted with a kind of bag in her back where she put these bad children and goes to eat them. Above her, she have this kind of bird who is also completely mythical. It doesn't exist. It's called the hook, and he have the reputation to make hap, hap, hap. It's a very good sounds to describe what he does. He eats eyes of human. He likes things like that, delicacy of that kind. And so he is dangerous also. And the two are associated here in this totem pole. Another representation done by Emily Carr also of what she thought was the Tsonokwa. It's called the Tsonokwa of the cat village, because you see here behind her, there's a lot of these cats. I don't know if you can recognize them. Again, because it's an abandoned village during the winter, and the cats are left behind. So when they see people, they are very friendly. They come to you, and or they are hungry and whatever. They are semi-feral cat, I would say, and she was touched by this. And she made a drawing of it here, and she called it Catsino. Okay, this is interesting, but it gives you more or less the place where it was done. And the doctor and anthropologist C.F. Newcomb in 1922 think he have found the subject matter of that was copied by the Medicar. The sculpture is here. You see she have on the top of her head this kind of weird creature. It's called the Sisiutal. I will show you later what it is. And then she holds in her hand this type of plaque here, which is called a copper. A copper is oh wait, just to see where it is, where she was, it's Catsino is here. Okay, you see? And so it's the tip of the Vancouver Island, the north tip, and it's close to the land, let's see, but all this is the Quatiutal region, all that you see on the map. So they have, some of them are on the island, others are, and they had, traditionally they see the strait here, the Queen Charlotte Strait, as a river. They don't see it as the sea, they see it as something flowing toward the sea. That was more or less their way. So Catsino, where, and of course, Emily Carr lived in the south, let's say, for a while in Victoria and then in Vancouver. So for her, it was not too difficult to, let's say, to travel up to this place and to make this drawing. She thought that she had seen another example of the Tsonokwa, but in fact, she was mistaken. What was represented there was a chief. And especially the fact that he had this kind of plaque of copper under his hand is typical. The copper is a way to show your richness. For instance, this chief here is called Chief Willie Seward, have two of them, one complete and the other a little bit incomplete. So this could be for many reasons. If, for instance, there is a kind of something unfortunate that happens in the family, they will remove a piece of it. Or in an exchange, let's say with another chief who is more richer than them, they will have to give a part of their copper. So it's used very often in the context of the potlatch. And as you know, potlatch is a competition of richness, basically. You receive your fellows, another tribe, and you really put them on at ease by the way you give them so much gift, because they have to do the same after. And if you are very, very generous, they will not be able to compete with you, and so you will keep the higher ranking. These are society without classes, but with ranks. You don't have classes, but you have ranks. You can be above. That's why it was so lethal for their culture when the Canadian government forbid the potlatch in the 50s. It was forbidden completely by the law. Then you could not know what was the hierarchy between each tribe. You lost track of your own history with that. And that's why it was so grave to destroy that. So here you see the proudness of the chief here, how he's proud to have these two coppers and all that. And the only connection that you could see with the Tsonokuwa was that the Tsonokuwa was the source of the copper. She was the one who gave this richness to the people who deserve it. But I don't think that Imirikar knew that. She thought she'd find another example of the Tsonokuwa, but in fact it was a representation of a chief in front of his house and with his copper. And you remember the kind of adornment that she have on her head, and is in fact this mythical animal, this Sisiutl, who is it's a two-face, it's a serpent with two heads, if you want, with horns, and it's very powerful also. It can transform in stone, his blood can transform in stone any piece of skin that he touched. So that's the thing that you have to be careful with. And during the ceremony also, these boards, because they are quite huge, were raised from the ground like this with pulleys and wires, as if to make it appear, you see, in the house. This was used like that. This is a replica carved in 1990 of an older piece, but it's exactly that. I found it clearer. The other piece is broken a little bit, but it gives a good idea of what it was. And you remember there was three mythical beings. There was the grizzly bear that was dangerous, the Tsonokuwa, and the bakwas. This is a mask of the bakwas. It's a kind of ghost, and also linked to the night and to the dark, and keep the kids also in line like the other. These three things. And to finish, I go back to my theme of the bear with this representation of a bear that holds in his hand a copper. I don't know if it's very abstract, we cannot see it much. And under him, there's a little personage there, because these are the type of sculpture that you will be received with during a potlatch by a chief to tell you, in comparison with me, you are just a child. And they call it rivalry sculpture. It's like a way to tell to the other, I'm more powerful than you. And so he have his copper in his hand. He belongs to the clan of bear, if you want. So that's why he will be represented as a bear. And he will put a little man there just to see how the other is. Not very friendly, but in a way, it was a wonderful way to avoid war. Because you make a competition of richness, the big issue is the rank, and so all the impulse, let's say, of aggressivity was channelized with that. You redistribute also the richness between the people. You don't accumulate. There's no capitalism in a system like that. You don't accumulate richness. You make it circulate, and you create like this a good way to diffuse war. We are not yet there. We don't know how to do this. And so you see, even with these two examples, what I wanted to show is this kind of a complex setting in which they appear. See? If you see them only or as artistic manifestation or only as a kind of religious manifestation, you miss some of it. It's much more intricate and much more complex. You have to read the mythology into the form, and you have to think of their political aspect also when you see the subject matter. So for a first approach of let's say the relationship between religion and Canadian art, I thought, well, this is very an interesting one. Next time we will deal with things maybe that are more familiar to me, with the art of New France, of the religious art of New France, of the beginning of the colony, let's say, in the French section of Canada at the time. And you will see things that you are probably also more familiar with. Okay, so thank you.